Hi guys, welcome to Coffee Tea, You and Me. I'm looking forward to having a great time with you all today. I'm a little discombobulated and I'm sorry I'm a little late. I've got some things going on that I'm still working on, and when it comes to the training today, so I wanted to really make sure I did a great job of delivering a document for you guys that could really be helpful in understanding what our topic might be today. And so I'm going to spend a few moments just pulling that all together, and it looks like I got a pretty difficult connection vis-a-vis Wi-Fi right now that I'm going to try to work on and fix. So I may lose you guys in just for a brief second. I'm going to go ahead and hit my hotspot here on my phone and use that instead of my home connection, because I think we might get a better connection that way. But then again, it looks pretty stable right now, so maybe I'll leave that alone. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do without the hotspot, and hopefully we'll be able to work that out. As people join the room, I want to remind you that what's really important here is that you spend a moment thinking about how you tell stories when it comes to your organization, your presentations, anything that you bring to the table. How do you do it? What's important to you to get across? Now, I try to tell people when it comes to storytelling and story selling or using story in presentation that one of the first things you have to always remember is that you must begin with the end in mind. And so what do we mean by that? If you start a story, if you start a presentation, and you don't know where you want to take your audience, you don't know what you want them to feel, you don't know what you want them to do with those feelings, then you're going to have a hard time really developing the kind of story that humanity has used throughout all of time to really do a good job of being I would call a functional storyteller. I mean, there's some elements, obviously, that I put in the 5 elements of perfect story that we've been fleshing out over the last few weeks. And well, today's topic is probably the most important of all the elements of a great story. In the first week, we kind of talked to you about all the elements and what they were all were and how you might want to put them together and some of the no-nos that you want to deal with when it comes to making a great presentation. And then we talked about impact, how important it is to begin your story or your presentation or your personal pitch, whatever it is, with an element of impact. You want to be able to share the benefits that you bring to the table. You want to be able to have people feel and connect to the protagonist of your story. So you want to use demographic information when you talk about who the character is that you're talking about, how you do that character development. You want to be able to give people information that they could see, that they could touch, that they could feel associated with the character that you're talking about, because you want them to be connected to that character. You want them to see who that character is and get a sense for other people that they may think of that may be similar or even themselves just like that character, right? Then you want that's impact. Then you want to follow the next step, which is to create drama. You want to be able to create some type of dichotomous experience that the character is dealing with, a situation where they are feeling pain, anguish, inappropriate, confused. They may be experiencing fear or some other type of guilt or blame or shame. You want to sink the character into the problem that they're experiencing in such a way that your audience can connect to the pain, the suffering, the anguish, the drama of it all. And in order for them to do that, you have to be able to juxtapose the idea of what your character is experiencing versus what your character could potentially experience if they were to make the right decisions, get the right training, come to the right conclusions, employ the right people, adopt the right processes, programs, or analysis, whatever it is that needs to happen to rescue that character. You need to be able to set that drama in place. You need to be able to say that you need to be able to understand, have people really understand and feel for the pain associated with your character. That's the drama. So first thing, impact, then drama. Now, after you set the impact and you set the drama in place, now people need to understand the hero, that character itself. Who is that character? The character has to become a hero. A character has to not just be in pain and in face overwhelming odds or deal with a dilemma. The character has to have what is required to overcome it, to be more resilient, to create more opportunity. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you illustrate and help people visualize the nature of your hero? How do you help them understand and come up with the goods when it comes to preparing a story, a presentation, whether that presentation has to be influential or that presentation has to share information? It really doesn't matter. Being able to use story, the elements of story, and being able to really define and shape a character that's experiencing the drama is a critically important part of successful storytelling or story selling or presentation, as I've indicated earlier. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, I hope to share with you a little bit more about, I'm going to give you a real life story about an actual client of mine. Of course, I've changed the names and I've changed the situation so that you'll never be able to identify the person if you know them. But I'm going to show you a real life story of a client who has dealt with some of the problems associated with life and business. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about, what an actual hero is. What are the characteristics of hero that you might come up with in your story, and why storytelling is so important and what it does for individuals who have listened and heard and become a part of a story. And I'm going to give you some resource materials that you can look at on your own that you'll be able to look up. And I'm also going to share with you, as I always do, some of the great literature that has inspired some thoughts that we have about humans always have had about leadership. I'm going to give you some quotes and some thoughts about what the Bible may share with you when it comes to dealing with heroes and how heroes act and should act. And that is a backdrop for all of humanity. Everything we've done in Western world is pretty much based on what we got from the Bible, who basically whose authors got most of their stuff from the Greek. And so it was funny. I was listening to some stories about Greek heroes and doing the research, and I found that a lot of the same stories that they share in the Bible are also shared in Greek mythology and probably Egyptian mythology and Norse mythology. And you'll find that those same stories of heroic conquest and things like that are things that we share. And then we're going to have a discussion about some tips that you may use and have whenever you want to develop your characters and how you might want to grow. Before we get started, let's talk with our audience. I see that we got a couple friends out there that are participating. I want to remind you, if you haven't already, definitely join us on Facebook. Definitely join us on YouTube. And if you can, I'd love to have you invite others so that we're not just speaking into the void every time we do one of these shows, but we're actually creating as much impact socially as we possibly can. I always tell people, if you got something good, share it. And if you think what we're doing is good, then I would hope that you would share with others in a way that would inspire them to jump on board, to peek in, to give a listen. Even after the program has been aired, obviously it can be shared. It will be recorded on both of those social media sites, YouTube and Facebook. And of course, I share it on everything that I do because I want people to have access to the best tools and the best materials possible to help them create whatever they need to create in their life and in their business. It is my passion and it is my great joy to present this information to all of you. And as we start to move things forward, I want to make sure I play my little commercial for you. And then after that, we'll be ready to rock and roll. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I got a few things I want to click through, and then I'm going to share my document with you that I've created. I think you're going to find that not only is the 5 elements of super engaging presentations going to be good, but how you deal with heroes in story selling is another document that I want to share with you that is fresh off the press. You may find some typos because I was cutting, copying, and pasting and collating and doing everything I can to get this ready for you today. But I fell a little bit behind because I got excited about some of the stuff I was writing, and I got a little bit behind, but that's okay. We're going to keep this party going. I need to, first of all, save this as a PDF before I share it with you. That'll make it easier for you to read. And then I've got to upload it to my Google Drive. So let's just see if I can do that without too much of a hassle. The commercial scared the cat. I love you, Nancy. I really do. Okay, you should be able to get the file from what I'm working on right now. So do me a favor and let me know if you could see or click on that file. You should be able to see it on YouTube and on Facebook if you need to. And you should be able to just go on the chat and download it. That's the file we're going to be talking about. That's the document we're going to be sharing today. Like I said earlier, there might be some typos or something in there. I'll fix those later on. But right now, I wanted to make sure that you understood you had something to work from, because it's going to be really, really clear in terms of our discussion. Okay, so let's break this down. What is a hero? Or how do you tell great hero stories? I love this quote that I pictured. If you look at the first page of our training manual or document, you're going to see a quote from Ursula Le Guin. I can't even know if I pronounced that right, but we'll see. And it says, nobody who says, "I told you so," has ever been or ever will be a hero. Nobody who says, "I told you so," has ever been or ever will be a hero. I use this quote because I want you to understand that when you tell the heroic tale of something that has happened or something that you've caused to happen or were a participant in, the hero in the story is not you. Because if it is you, you're not going to look good in the presentation of the story. You must choose a protagonist. You must create a hero outside of yourself. The hero needs to be a partner that you were working with, a client that you had, a referral source of yours, or some type of stakeholder that you were working with. Because if you tell that story about that person and their heroic deeds, you're still going to get the same credit as if, in fact, you'll get more credit than is if you said that you were the hero in the story. Because one, you're the storyteller. You're the master that weave the details and the strategy together for the story itself. And you're going to get all the benefits that the hero would normally get if a person on the outside witnessed you doing the things that you're going to be illustrating that your hero does. And I'll explain to you those in a few seconds. When you learn to tell and create great heroism in the stories that you tell, what happens to your listening audience is, one, it elevates their consciousness. Two, it helps them heal from wounds they may have experienced in the past. Three, it nourishes their social connections. Four, it inspires them to new possibilities. And lastly, it helps them become a hero as well. Now, as your protagonist experiences the things that they experience during your story, these are the things that come alive. I'm going to give you an example as I read to you Warren's story. And later on, we're going to break down and see if this really works. And this is not a finishing part of Warren's story, but this is setting Warren up to be the hero in this story. And I want you to go along with me and see what you think. Warren was not just your average four-letter athlete in high school. He was the kind of kid that showed tons of talent for innovation and leadership in everything that he did. His grades and his skills, he could have easily entered any college he wanted to go to in the land, but he chose instead to join Eli & Sons program. He's the kind of kid that shows tons of talent. Oh my God, I can't believe I repeated that. Eli & Sons had been a long-standing business tradition in what was once the small town of Reston in Northern Virginia. Mr. Eli had sponsored most of Warren's teams as a young lad and had seemed to follow him all of his life. No matter where he went, whether he was playing soccer or basketball or tennis or whatever, it seems like Eli & Sons were always the local sponsors, right? And although Warren had a dad of his own, he always looked up to Mr. Eli. You see, Warren always saw himself as a tinkerer, and he loved getting his hands dirty. 20 years later, Warren found himself a master plumber in old man Eli's company. Long since retired, Mr. Eli left his two sons in charge, and neither of them had the technical expertise to run a crew or even to connect a pipe. Warren found himself in a bit of a pickle when he realized that after a church-led workshop on personal financial planning that he hadn't saved enough, anywhere near enough. He and his wife Cindy hadn't saved anywhere near enough to take his boys, 11 and 13, and make sure that they had what they needed to go to college. Just the ticket price alone of thinking about what it was going to cost at the time his children were going to go was overwhelming, especially if they went out of state or went into a private university. There was no way, considering their current debt load, to make it happen and to pay the mortgage on Warren's salary. Painfully and reluctantly, Warren was forced to approach the Eli brothers with a proposal. He needed to desperately become a partner in the business in order to improve his pay, his way of life, and sadly, he'd have to strike out on his own if they did not agree. The brothers saw an opportunity to not just stave off Warren as a competitor and to rope him into staying with the company without any significant benefit. They knew that they could create more value for their company and more value for themselves if they could trick him into staying on board. So here's what they told him. They said, Warren, if you will deliver in the next 6 months an impossible 200% growth to the company with what you're doing, we will make sure that we give you a partnership in the company and a requisite bump in your salary and benefits. And with this, you can fund your boy's education. Warren was nervous because he thought that was a big number, thought that was a big goal, and he didn't even know how he was going to do that. But he agreed to give it a shot. He didn't have a clue how he was going to get this done, but he accepted that deal. Now, I hope that you can see in Warren's story all the elements that you need to set your characters up to be a hero. Because if you're not really on the edge of your seat right now, if you're not waiting to see how this drama is going to unfold, I haven't done a good job. So I want you to think of things. I want you to think of these questions as I ask them to you, and I want you to think about them. Do you think of people and situations that you haven't thought of previous to the moment when you heard about Warren's story? That make you think about other people who maybe forego their education to join a company, only to have that company threaten their livelihood and their growth and development after they committed a serious amount of time and energy towards it. Did you think of somebody like that? Can you see how Warren's past might have set him up for a disastrous fall by not going to college, or by getting married too early, or by having too many children, or spending too much money on the mortgage, not really thinking about what his future was going to be like, but just digging into becoming a master plumber? Do you feel for Warren? Can you see a way for him to get out of this dilemma? Do you see how he might win if he can make the right decisions from here? These are very, very important questions to ask, because if you do this well, if you put your stories together well, if you put them together where people can feel connected to your character, and I want to say that it's important that you do that, because if they can't be connected to the audience that you're talking about, can't be connected to the problem that your character has, if they don't really feel connected to that problem, when the solution arrives, when your character makes a decision, buys the program, does whatever he or she has to do to resolve this problem, then it won't be as much of a leap emotionally to the solution that you may provide. And I hope you understand that. So you have to do a really, really good job. If you don't say it was painful, if you don't say there was anguish, if you don't say it was turmoil, if you don't say that your character was experiencing, just sleepless nights and not able to figure out what to do next in spite of trying, right? If you don't say these things, then your audience is not going to necessarily connect to the character. If you don't describe that person very well, if you don't describe the demographics of which that person exists very well, then again, your audience is not going to connect to that person, or they're not going to think of somebody who they know that might fit the description of your character. And you need that to happen in order to maximize the engagement of your audience. You need it to happen in order for them to feel like they know this guy, or they know somebody like him, or like the character that you're describing. I'm going to stop right there and make sure that I have adequately shared this point with you. Do you feel like it's impossible to tell a story that might involve a client, a referral source, a supporter of yours, that might help them feel more connected to you, or might get more connected to possibility? If you feel like you can't, or that's not possible, do me a favor and put in the chat, either here now or some point in time in the future. Tell me what it is that you do, or what it is that you think you do. And let me help you start to craft that. In fact, that's what we do in our workshops all the time, is we help individuals really learn how to craft the language required to convince and to support what they want to have someone do. Next week, we're going to get into how you take your hero story and the resolution of it to create a vision for what you want people to do with that story and why that vision is critically important. But today we're talking about the hero story and the elements of the hero story and how you can use these elements to move yourself and your hero forward. So I mentioned to you earlier the 5 elements of a great hero story. Now, all of these elements do not have to appear in your story. You don't have to use them all the time. You don't have to come up with them all the time. But I would say, try to, in every story you tell, try to get 2 or 3 of those elements in the hero story, right? What I mean by elevating your consciousness. Great hero stories always elevate your consciousness. And they do this in a very special and unique way, right? They make you feel in such a way as maybe you haven't felt before for a person or the character that you're describing as your protagonist in the story. They help the listening audience and anybody else really connect to that person because you're getting an inside look at that person's feelings, at that person's angst, problems, or issues. Now, you can also do this from, pain is a great way to do this to connect people, but but also pleasure is too. It's easier to do something painful than to do something pleasurable because where you're taking the story is to take that person from a very, very low process or very low situation in their life to a higher situation in their life. And it's hard to go from a high to higher than it is. It's easier to go from a low to higher, right? So you want to elevate the consciousness of the people who listen to the story because they're taking the ride along with the character. They're going with the character that you're sharing. They're emotionally connecting and they're going with that character to the depths of the problem up into the height of the solution. And they're feeling every feeling the hero is feeling as they move through the pain, suffering, anguish, the trials, the tribulations, the falling down and the getting back up and the falling down and the get back up, and they're feeling more resilient. And they're going along. They're elevating their own conscience along with as the hero goes through the trials that the hero has to go through. This is very, very important because in storytelling, you can do this in ways you can do in no other medium, right? Because you can suspend time and belief in storytelling. You can tell a fantastic tale about a moment that really is just what do they call it? Futuristic thriller type of story. You could tell that. But I don't suggest that you talk about those kinds of fantastical stories just because you have the tools available to you in the narrative to do that. I suggest that you don't do that because you're trying to make it believable that you could be a part of the solution that the hero is going to be doing at some point in the future. And you want them to come along with you into reality, not into fantasy, right? So you want to elevate the consciousness. Number 2, your hero has to go through the same things that all of us go through, right? So they have to go through the same kinds of pains, the same kinds of anguish, the same kinds of doubt and fear they may have when making a choice to move forward, making a choice to learn more, making a choice to adopt or to accept some solution, some problem. They have to go through that. And we have to see the hero going through that so that we can connect to it because that's what we go through. We all have psychic wounds from our past. We all have baggage. We all have emotional issues that we have either resolved or resolved incorrectly or resolved in a way that is just basically sort of putting them to coping mechanisms that have let us mask the problem so that we can keep going, right? But we haven't really necessarily dealt with the problem. And when you see your hero dealing with the problem, when you visualize and understand that the hero is dealing with the problem that a problem that we all may have had or may have, then as the hero comes to resolution of that particular problem, so do we all. And it heals our past wounds because we were experiencing. You have to realize, if you tell a story well, you make your audience experience the same things that the protagonist is experiencing. And so that protagonist then heals, and so do we, the audience, heal if you do it right. Number 3, the social connections get to be nourished because your hero gets to see potential in himself and others in making the choices that he has to make in life. And again, the audience gets to see how to connect socially to others and how those social connections might be the thing they need to have to rescue them from their angst, their sorrows, their traumas, their dramas. And that makes a big difference because what happens is the audience learns how to be better socially through watching and seeing what the hero does. Now, of course, the hero is dealing with a level of bravery and a level of commitment and courage that most of us can only dream about. But that is, in fact, what we do dream about whenever we see someone performing amazing feats that we know it's real because our eyes see it. Especially on the athletic field or in the performance arts, or whether it's dance or drama or whatever, theater. I think when we see people do amazing things, we automatically, have more courage for ourselves, and we automatically begin to engage. There is a social connection sort of drug that we emit. Our brains and our nervous systems will sort of emit when we feel connected to people socially. When we feel good about them, we feel good about ourselves. And it's called, the name of it is right on the tip of my tongue. I can't believe I'm forgetting it right now. But when we actually create those hormones and allow those hormones to become a part of us, we feel connected, we feel closer, we feel like it's possible, things are possible with people, we feel more relaxed, and it really nourishes those social connections. It's called, wow, can't believe I forgot what it's called, it's crazy. So anyway, when that happens, we can't help it. And when we take that ride with our hero in the story, and that hero finds the great love, and that hero finds the great satisfaction, that hero connects to the solution, and the hero does all the things that he needs to do to resolve the problem, it's always going to involve some other person, some information, something shared with him. Something happened to create the healing process, and it always nourishes people's social connections. It always helps them produce oxytocin. Oxytocin. Anyway, it helps them create that, and the more that floods your bloodstream and your emotional system, the better you feel. The more you're in love with whoever helped you feel that way. It's just the way that happens. And so you're creating that progesterone, that oxytocin, what's needed to create that feeling moment. And it's really, really important, because when it doesn't happen, people don't feel that social connection. And so telling your stories allow people to visualize and see themselves in those social moments where they're experiencing somebody else who's rescuing them from that drama, from that pain, from that dissatisfaction, and they're getting that oxytocin. Very, very important. So now you've elevated the consciousness of a person, you've helped them heal them psychic wounds, you might have, helped them create more social connections through your stories. The next thing you might want to possibly do when you're talking about story is really, really think about how you can create better inspiration for possibility. These stories have been used over and over for years to help people increase their faith, in order to help them believe in themselves and believe in each other, and do things that will help them to take risks that they normally wouldn't take, or experience new things in a way they normally wouldn't have experienced it, because they saw it happen. They saw it, the hero did it. and they want to be a hero themselves. They want to connect to that level of heroism. They want to feel like they're connecting to something special and doing something admirable. I said it over and over again. All of us want to be relevant. We want to do things that are meaningful. We want to feel significant, and we want to make an individual contribution to life in a way that's useful, that's meaningful, right? So we all want to do these things. And when we see heroes doing it, we understand the possibility of it for ourselves. We feel the possibility for ourselves, and then we want to engage in the action required to do. We want to do the things that heroes do. We want to be accepted. We want the benefits, man, that heroes get. We want the love, the accolades, and all the social acceptance and all that kind of stuff. And so in this way, the inspired possibility helps us believe in one another, it helps us believe in ourselves, helps us connect more to other people, and all kinds of great things happen as a result of it. So think about this. When's the last time you heard a story that truly inspired you? Would you like to be able to tell those kinds of stories in front of maybe potential stakeholders who might invest in your business, maybe people who might need to purchase the highest end of your product offering, because they will see that you understand the depths of their problem because you have solved the problem before to various types of characters. So when you can do this, you can inspire possibility. People will feel more comfortable taking whatever they think might be a risk with working with you. And you want that. You want to be an inspiration. You want to be a motivator. You want to be somebody who provides people and empowers people to move forward in whatever their life is, and more importantly, if you're an entrepreneur, in the solutions that you provide. Because if you can't do that, then do you really provide a solution? You have to ask yourself the question, am I a solution provider if there's no problem that I'm actually solving? If I can't demonstrate and characterize and create a visualization, people can understand the depths of the problem that I can solve with my product or solution, am I doing enough? Am I doing a disservice to myself by not being able to express that in as clear and as bold language as I possibly can so that people can connect? Stories help you do that. Stories help you magnify opportunities in amazing ways. The last thing that stories need to do, because of all the 4 things we talked about before, and the 5th idea is that when you tell great stories and great heroic tales, what you're actually doing is creating heroic moments for others to emulate. Because as again, I told you, we go on this hero's journey with the stories that we tell. We take people on this hero's journey. Because we do that, they're experiencing all the things that they would normally experience if they went through the journey themselves. And because of their experience, they're learning. They're learning how to be heroic. They're learning how to commit. They're learning how to be resilient. They're learning how to struggle. They're learning how to move things forward in spite of the obstacles that are there, the challenges that are presented to them. And because you're telling a hero story, they have examples. They have real life in their minds, examples of what a hero looks like, what a hero can be like, what they should be like if they wanted to be like a hero in the story that you just told. All these things help them become the heroes in their own lives, in their own businesses. And this is why it's critically important. Now, when you get good at this, when you get good at telling hero stories, anytime you want to present, anywhere you're talking, anywhere you're sharing information, understand that you're doing one or all 5 of these things. You're elevating consciousness. You're helping to heal their old psychic wounds. You're helping to nourish their social connections. You're helping to inspire possibility, and you're helping to create new heroes. I can't stress to you how important that is. If you're not doing that, if you're just talking about the facts and the features of what you offer, then you're wasting a lot of effort and energy to go nowhere, because people won't connect to facts and features. They won't connect to your products or your solutions if they can't feel like they've gotten there, that they're doing that. And that's what storytelling does. It helps people feel. It helps people connect in an emotional way. You're connecting them, not just their rational minds, but you're connecting their emotional minds. I know what you're thinking out there. A lot of people are going, well, I want people to be educated about what I do. I want them to feel like they understand it completely. And I'm going to share with you, some of the secrets to the kingdom as we talk about this even further today. People don't have to know what you do as much as they have to understand the benefit that you provide to them. And that's what they need to understand more than they have to know what it is that you do. What it is that you do might have taken you years to understand, to train, the technical aspects of it all, the jargon, the language, the whole, rationale behind every little part of the process. If you're a doctor or you're an accountant or you're a lawyer, you've spent a lot of time, effort, and energy in the details of your craft. You're not going to be able to explain to someone else those details. If you try, you're going to overwhelm them. They don't have the years that it took to train and to take classes and to have discussions with peers and to look at the literature involved with this industry. They don't have that. You can't do that to them. And even if they did, if you gave them so much information that they could basically do your job, then they wouldn't need you. So think through, really, how do you tell a story? How do you illustrate? How do you help them visualize the benefits that they will receive by working with you? So much so that they become the hero in the story that you're telling. And they start telling themselves their own hero story and putting themselves in the story as to, I'm going to be the hero because I'm going to accept this person as the guru. I'm going to accept you as the person who's going to help me lead myself into a greater future for myself. People get confused often in sales presentations, and they think the sales presentation is about the product. It's about the service. It is not. I'm going to, hopefully help you. I've convinced you, or I will continue to convince you today that it's not about you. It's got to be about them. Even down to something as simple. I'll give you an example. I just had my deck restored on my house. And I really had a problem with this deck because, I hadn't done the things I needed to have, that I needed to do to make sure that, the wood was maintained the way it needed to be maintained. It was chipping. It was starting to have experience a little bit of dry rot, and the problems were just overwhelming with this deck. And we already sunk quite a bit of money into this deck. We just didn't do what we needed to do to maintain it. I don't think we really ever had it treated correctly or stained. So some of the planks were just just falling apart, and they weren't good, and they needed to be replaced. And so I didn't know how to do this stuff myself, and I certainly knew that I could Google it and figure it out and work with my own hands and figure it out. But I thought, man, this is a problem. So I started getting quotes from people who promised that they could restore my deck. And I got quotes, just to get a sense for the cost and the work associated with this, so that I understood that. I needed to understand what it would take to take it from where it was, which was poor, dilapidated condition, to, updating it and rejuvenating it and making it, something that I would really wanted to spend some time on and enjoying, right? So, it took a considerable amount of effort for me to really just go into that analysis mode, really just figure out, how I was going to do this. If I was going to finance it, how was I going to finance it? If I wanted to come out of pocket, how much was I willing to come out of pocket for? If I found somebody who I could trust to do the work, how would I validate that this trust was meaningful? What I call their references, what I look at their other processes and products. It just so happened that my neighbor is a general contractor. And he had already been talking to me about some other projects around the house. And I asked him about, who he uses to do things like decks and fences and, power washing and all that kind of stuff. And he said, I got a guy that I work with. In fact, they happen to be working on my house right now. You want to come and meet him? And I did. And I met the gentlemen who were going to do the work on my deck and other little handyman projects I had around the house. And I felt comfortable because not only were they low cost, but easy access to get to, and they were already working with my neighbor who was going to be the general contractor on the job. So I now knew who I wanted to use. I just didn't know how much it was going to cost me. So I ran some cost analysis and so on and so forth. And I came back that my neighbor could do this for a lot less than people were projecting for me to do, because they were offering just not just they weren't just trying to do everything. They were just trying to take away the rough spots or the pieces of the deck that were bad, and replace them with newer parts of newer wood and updated wood, and then make sure that they were properly treated and then stained and all that kind of stuff, and then everything was done. Because I did that, because I went through that process, that arduous process, I didn't want to do it. I really didn't. I really want to just ignore it one more year. But because I went through that process, I was able to make a good decision and make sure that I had the deck that I needed to have. And I've been cooking and enjoying that deck now for a year and a half. This is the thing. Your hero is not, it's not the guys who made the deck happen for me. It was me. I made the decision. I did the work. I struggled to come up with the solution. And now my wife and I, my wife's got flowers out there and all kinds of stuff. She goes out, and even though she has allergies, she still goes out. She'll at least go out the deck and enjoy the deck for a while to water her flowers. And she creates a vision that she can see from inside the kitchen and outside the deck. And then it all makes her feel good about her life and her day. All that was because I was able to make that decision. I was able to pull the trigger and come up with the financing and come up with the strategy that made sense for our household. I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I did do it. And I managed the process. I watched what they did and how they did it, and I made sure that it was right and correct. And I knew my neighbor was going to back me up. I got a level of trust involved with him, and everything worked. Everything worked just phenomenally. So the hero in that particular story was not my neighbor who was general contractor of a situation. It was me. And if he tells a story, he needs to tell a story about his neighbor who was, pulling his hair out about, what he was going to do about this deck possibly falling down and being outside of code, or, creating a safety hazard for himself and his family. You can't have a party on the deck that, may not hold the weight. You just can't do it, right? So you have to have it. You have to make sure it's inspected by the right people. You have to make sure that, it's going to work, because imagine the tragedy of having maybe 5 or 10 people out on an outing and the deck falls down. You can't use a deck that you're not comfortable with. You can't use it if you think that it might be dangerous or unsafe for people, and especially yourself. So, you got to make the call. You got to make the tough decision. You got to figure out how to make it work. And if it's your first time ever doing something like that, then it's even that much harder. That's the hero moment. That's the moment where a person starts to feel like they can connect to that story. You see what I'm saying? Very, very important that you do that when you tell your stories. You make the hero of your story not yourself, but your client. And you have to give us all the information we need to see your client or your referral source or your partner or someone who's going to support you as the hero in your story. And if you do that well, then we can put ourselves in that space of being the hero, whether it's going to be funding your business or supporting you in whatever way you want to be supported, or sharing your information, promoting you, or whatever we're trying to do. We need to feel like we're going to be the hero in that story. Your job is to illustrate and create a story where those feelings can happen. If you don't do that well, then you're going to find a lot of problems in the situation. Okay, so I read to you Eli's story, and I broke down to you a little bit about how Eli's story might satisfy the 5 elements that you may want to satisfy when you talk about creating heroes in your stories. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what heroes are. Literally, what is a hero? A hero is a person that everybody loves. Everybody loves a hero. They love them for their adventurous spirit. They love them for taking the calculated risks. They love them because they're experiencing the danger and the pain of a situation. When you tell a story, And your heroic tales, right? It needs to be full of adventure. It needs to be full of people who are slaying the dragon, so to speak, whatever the dragon is for them. But every hero has to deal with the same elements that we all have to deal with. They have to deal with fear. They have to deal with shame. They have to deal with confusion. They have to deal with blame. And so if you can create situations where your heroes are having to deal with those things, doubt, all kinds of negative emotions, your hero has to deal with that, but still continue to fight through it, still continue to move on, still continue to make the tough decisions. If your heroes do that, then they're going to make all those connections that we talked about earlier. If you can see, you can tell that story how that hero does that. So think about that. Your heroes are always bold. They're brave and they're courageous. If you can't find that to happen in the hero stories that you tell, then you need to do a better job. You need to sit down. And I would suggest to you that you sit down with your friends, that you sit down with associates of yours, and you ask them about this character that you're creating, and see if it feels real. See if they connect to it. See if they can connect to the story before you even go out and tell the public that you need to tell it. Whether you write it down or you share it in some type of training materials or whatever you share, even if you're writing a blog post or a social media post, you can tell a hero story. And you can do it as long as you remember the format we're putting it in for you. You're able to do that. You should be able to do that really, really well. The Bible talks about hero stories almost in every chapter. It's always been used as a way to help people become more faithful, to embolden and strengthen them and to keep them pushing. It's helped them to align themselves with real purpose and real sense of mission. And it's always helped them feel like they weren't alone. Those social connections that we said before, it's very, very important to realize that, heroes have to go through the same things that we have to go through in life. They may go through them in a bigger, more bolder, more illustrative way, but heroes fail because they take risks. They fail over and over and over and over again, probably much more than you and I would ever fail. But they keep going, and that's the point of the heroes and that the stories that you need to tell. You need to tell the story of the resilience of your hero to keep going, to push towards the resolution. And I've got here in the document that I'm sharing with you guys, and I'm going to have to figure it out now that I'm going to have to rewrite that thing, at least the beginning of it, because it didn't come out the way I wanted to. But I'm missing a lot of great quotes in here. And one of my favorite ones, and I'm going to share this one with you just because I just love this one. This one is from Alfred Lord Tennyson. Tennyson says, "Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temple of heroic hearts, we made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield." I love that quote. It came from Idyllis of the King, and it's a selection of poems by Tennyson. Think about that. What is it like? How does your hero in your story remind us of our humanity? How does the hero in your stories remind us that we can strive, and that we can seek, and that we can find, and we can never quit, and we can keep going, and we can be more resilient? If you do that, then people feel good. Another quote that I'm going to share with you is from Gerard Way. It says, "Heroes are ordinary people who make themselves extraordinary." You don't make them extraordinary because you provide your services and products. They make themselves extraordinary because they tried, because they made the decision, because they made the tough call, because they bought it and decided that you were going to be a solution, that your product or service is going to be a solution for them. They went through the process to make that decision happen, and that's how they become the hero in their own story, right? It's very, very important that you illustrate that, because if you're doing that, imagine you're just inviting people to be the heroes in their own story. I think about it like that. Who doesn't want that invitation? Who doesn't want to fall in love with their own growth and development and move themselves forward? I feel like they're doing what they can do to move themselves forward in a way that's the right way, the proper way, the way that people are going to look at them and go, well done, outstanding, right? You want that. And the more you can create that, the better off you'll be. There's some exercises that I want to tip you off to. And I think the last page or last 2 pages, let me see what page numbers were, page 10. I love these exercises, and a lot of them I do, and I'm going to share with you what I do with them. But it's very important. When you talk about the heroic tales that you want, think about the end result that you want people to do, right? How does your hero discover or develop his or her gifts? How do they take their talents and stretch them into the possibility that's in front of them? You know, what do they need to do, be, and have in order to get where they want to go? I will write it out. I'll write out the 3 talents or 3 areas that you think your character might have some discouragement or feel weak, and then help that character to create a scaffolding to lift them up out of the pain and the suffering, the anguish that they're experiencing because of those weaknesses into a higher elevation. Now, because I do training and development, right, that's my life, that's my job, right? I'm always helping people sort of discover the thing that's holding them back, and then get around and strengthen it, get around it, do what they need to do to mitigate it so that it's no longer a problem holding them back, find partners, whatever they got to do to elevate themselves to the next situation, right? How do you do that? How does your hero show that that's happening in their lives? You know, that they're in that process of wanting to see that happen in their lives. That's how you know that, you know, that human, you know, connection is right there. Where is your hero showing that they're brave and they're bold and they're courageous? Write it down. Just just think about 5 ways that your hero is showing bravery, 5 ways that your hero is showing courage, 5 ways that your hero is showing resilience. And, you know, you may not use them all in the story, but just see if you can come up with as many ways as possible for your hero to use your product and service, or to use the potential of your product and service to show those moments, because you're going to want to capture that element, the element of belief in your story. If you do that well, people are going to go, oh, wow, that's how I can use it. I never thought about it that way, or I never thought about it that way. But you're letting people experience, you know, your product or service or the thoughts that you want to share with them in a way that's third-party influence, in a way that somebody else is experiencing it, not you. You're not sharing, you're not doing it, it's them. They get to be the hero, right? And so there's so many other questions that are here in what you think your hero could be doing to regularly achieve higher levels of mastery in their calling or their gifting. Now, I love talking about how my heroes went from where they are into what they're doing. And it always requires, you know, I try to make sure that the hero has to go through some level of introspection. You know, there's a truth that my heroes have to accept, that this is, now that is the truth. Now that they know that this is the situation they're dealing with, and they see it for what it really is, no matter what guilt or blame or pain they have for finding themselves in this situation, they are resolved to not be here in this situation anymore. They want to do something to move themselves forward. I like to make sure my heroes are sink that into my heroes, into the characters that I try to create, no matter what, because I think that, again, people can see themselves in that moment. They can see themselves attached to that moment. And sometimes my hero has to do some soul searching, they have to do some meditation, they have to do some prayer, they have to do some contemplation about their situation, so they can come and arrive to that moment of truth where, you know what, this is it. This is what's really happening. I won't tolerate this anymore. I'm going to do something different. And that's the heroic moment, when they decide to do something different, because whatever they're experiencing right now is intolerable, cannot continue, or they know they will not be happy, they will not be satisfied, they will not be content until the change happens, or at least they're embarking upon the change. It's critical that your hero is experiencing these kinds of moments, because, again, like I told you earlier, if there's no depths that your hero is being resurrected from, then when that person is resurrected from those deaths, that situation, then it's not that much of a solution. It's not good because it was never that much of a problem in the first place. So you have to have a backstory for your hero. I love that in section 8 we talk about, understanding where your hero is really coming from, not just from a physical place, but from an emotional and social place. Where is your hero? How is your hero raised? What were they developed from? What kind of childhood did they have? How did those experiences play themselves in their forward trajectory? And what got them from where they were to where they are, at this moment, right? The experience in this moment right now, as you're describing it in your stories. And then, what do they have to do to move from this moment to their future? You got to know that stuff. You got to know their backstory, where they're coming from. And then you have to be able to illustrate that in a way that it can be easily seen that they need to make some choices in order to move them forward that aren't the same choices they may have made in their past. So when you can create heroes that do that, then that hero can have a paradigm shift. That hero can have something they need an exposure to a new idea, a new process that will ease their burden. They have what they need to be believable, and they have what they need to increase their faith in their possibility. And if you can do that in the stories that you tell, then you can help take people on that hero's journey with you, and you can help them really, really experience some things that they could not experience without you, the storyteller. So I find that all these things are techniques and processes that you can really use to contemplate how to create the kind of heroic adventures that people fall in love with, the characters that people can remember, the things that people will repeat over and over and over again, because they will feel connected to the pains of associating with being that hero, right? A hero is always telling them, if you don't leave this particular training with any other information, I want you to have this information that the hero story is always a story of universal truth that everybody would basically agree with, that, this person needs to experience this, and they need to experience it in this way in order for them to experience the next thing, right? We all know it. No matter what our religious or cultural background the truth of this is universal. And if you're able to tell and hit that universal strength building, that universal resilience, that universal character development that comes along with telling great hero stories, then you're going to win. People are going to be attracted to you. They're going to remember you. They're going to repeat you. They're going to follow you. They're going to belong basically in your tribe. That's how you're going to recruit people to become a part of your success. And whatever tools and programs and processes and resources they can bring to the table for you, they're more likely to do that when you tell those great hero stories. When you don't, then they're less likely to do that. Okay, we're going to close up shop today. It's about 4:05, and we're going to move on to our next situation. Next week, for those of you who come back, we're going to be talking about how to take your hero stories to the next level. Because in the previous training, we've talked about how to create the drama, how to sync the drama, how to create impact in your storytelling, how to make that hero come alive and become real for people. But now that's all been about, what you're doing for your listening audience and how you can engage with them and how you can create opportunities for them. But now you have to figure out how to bring you back into the presentation. How do you start to turn the corner and provide some idea about what you want people to do as a result of hearing and listening to this story? And that's vision. That's what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about how you use vision to share with people the clarity of the moment where, you and them, along with you, will arrive, and how they can help you arrive and you can help them go with you along another hero's journey, with the stories that you just told, with the stories that you share, and help them to share. And we'll talk about that next week. I'll see you guys later. Had a great time. Hope you guys had a great time. Again, if you have any questions or any input that you want to add to what we're talking about today, make sure you put that information in the chat. I will follow up. I will respond, if that's on YouTube or if it's on LinkedIn or if it's on Facebook. I'll definitely respond to you guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.